Hi everyone, welcome to week 6 of Fascism in Europe. This week we are looking at propaganda, and I know what you're thinking. You're probably going to say to me, well Dave, aren't we doing propaganda in pretty much every single session? And you wouldn't be wrong to say that. However, this week we're going to give it its due attention and focus specifically in on propaganda as a process. I know we've just done archaeology last week, and archaeology was rife with propaganda, just as architecture was before. But it's an inescapable part of the fascist process. So much of the ideology is about shaping the way people are thinking, so propaganda is something that's going to be cropping up at all times in this module. So, what makes week 6 different? Well, for a start, we have fascist Pinocchio, which is always a bit of a highlight in this module. Always remember a couple of things about Pinocchio. By the way, we're looking at Champions Path cards this week, probably the last week that we'll be doing Champions Path because Vivid Voltage is on its way, so we'll be changing focus and looking for Pikachu cards in the near future. A couple of things on Pinocchio. Always remember that this is an Italian story, first and foremost. And the other thing to remember is that Pinocchio originally, and can I say this? Is it appropriate to say this? Let's say it. Originally, Pinocchio was a bit of a dick. He is not the lovable lightning energy. And apologies for the lighting. It's kind of late in the day, so lighting's a little bit off here. Originally, Pinocchio was a really malevolent creature, known for bullying and torturing those who spend time with. Eventually, this is a sort of a spoiler for the session. In the original story of Pinocchio, Pinocchio is actually executed by a couple of his animalistic cohort. So it's a really dark narrative. However, it was a very popular narrative, and one which, because it was popular, was co-opted by fascism. And so here you see what could only be described as fascist Pinocchio beating up a communist in this particular image. And that's sort of linking back to weeks 1 and 2 of the module, where we were looking at the way in which the black shirts were being used as a sort of a bulwark against the threat of communism. So here, Fascist Pinocchio is a heroic figure, but he's clearly being used in a propaganda context. Grapploct. Sorry, I was talking about pre-evolution. Nice, Grapploct. Okay, cool. Good. That's a good start. Being used here in the process of appealing to a younger demographic, because of course this is sort of a folkloric children's story, a story about morality, sure, but directed at children. So by utilizing sort of pseudo-lovable childhood figures, this is one of those mechanisms by which the PNF in Italy is able to appeal to children. And I suppose that's going to be a big focus of what we're doing in this session. We are going to be looking quite specifically at the way in which children, in both an Italian and a Germanic context, water energy, are being, I suppose, conditioned to accept fascism as not just as an ideology, but as a way of life. So we'll be looking at the way in which propaganda is working its way into schools, both in terms of official state literature, blurry hop, and also more casual literature as well. It's all shaping up a landscape in which children are being prepared, in many instances, to go to war on behalf of the fascist Italian state. Seamless transition. I wasn't interrupted in the middle of this recording at all. And on we go with the pack. The other part of this narrative is, of course, a much darker process of conditioning as well. And we'll see this less in an Italian context and more in a Germanic context, and that's, of course, the anti-Semitic narrative, where, again, school literature is playing a major role in preparing children. Sorry, super blurry. Like Rock, we've seen you before. And Obstagon. Okay, cool. We don't have that card yet, but not bad. Conditioning children to have a certain mindset about racial groups in a Germanic context. This is not something new to Germany. for my students who went through the nationalism module with me, you'll be familiar that the process of demonizing not just racial groups but cultural groups that don't necessarily adhere to steel energy, they don't necessarily adhere to state-approved narratives or state-approved ideas of what participants of the state should be. It's something that had been active in Germany all throughout the 19th century. All through the 19th century, going back as early as the Grimm brothers' folk tales. So there's been a long sort of train of conditioning that German youths have been going through. But we see it ramped up exponentially to the extent, and one of the most striking examples that we use is maths textbooks, which also serve to reinforce, believe it or not, the anti-Semitic narrative. Again, in the Germanic context, we'll look at what's happening both in an official state context and in more casual literature as well. And we'll see some of that literature echoing in wider European contexts as well. It's not just in the fascist states that language which demonizes members of cultural groups that don't necessarily adhere to the state ideal plays out in other cultural contexts as well. And we'll touch on where that's happening at the same time. Obstacle, the reverse of the card that we just had, and this is our last card, I think. Oh, it would have been red, wouldn't it? But no. Okay, a shiny little mashup there. Okay, so Year 3, we did not get the Charizard pulls in this set of cards. We did get a very nice Grapploct. Happy with that. Centering is a little bit off on the back as well. So not the best quality card, but one that we haven't drawn before and a very nice pull. So I will try and find you an extra reading based on that card. Okay, great. So that's what we're looking at this week. It's all about propaganda. There will be some difficult material in there, but hopefully it's an interesting session nonetheless. So, as ever, we will see you on Tuesday and look forward to catching up with you then. All right, bye for now.